Have you ever felt that something really makes no sense? As if there were pieces missing in the puzzle of existence? What would they say if I told you that what you call reality may be a carefully designed illusion? There is a powerful knowledge, hidden for centuries, that could free your mind and expand your consciousness to unimaginable levels. But of course, this kind of information is not easily reached. It has been systematically suppressed, ridiculed, and buried under layers of distraction and manipulation. The truth is that there is an alternative reality accessible to those who dare to question the system. The fifth dimension is not a physical place, but a state of consciousness that breaks the shackles of mental programming imposed since birth. And why no one talks about it? Because a wake-up society is impossible to control. Fear as a control tool, the illusion of time, technological distractors, and even the foods we consume have been designed to keep humanity disconnected from its true essence. If this seems radical, it may be because you have never had the opportunity to see beyond the veil. But don't worry, because today everything will change. Throughout this video, you will find out how this hidden reality works and how to access a level of perception that few know. Get ready to have your challenged worldview, for once you see the truth, there is no way back. The question is, are you ready to wake up? Many people imagine the fifth dimension as a distant place, an ethereal space reserved for the illuminated only. But the truth is much more fascinating. It is not a place, but a state of expanded consciousness. Those who access this alternative reality begin to realize that life goes far beyond what the eyes can see. Suddenly, hidden patterns emerge, previously invisible connections make sense, and the illusion of material reality begins to collapse. It is like getting out of a deep trance and seeing the world without the filters imposed by social control. Those who awaken to this new perception notice that the whole life has been shaped by a subtle but powerful mental programming. From an early age, we are conditioned to believe that what we see and touch is all that exists, that reality comes down to an infinite cycle of work, consumption, and distraction. But what if the existence was much richer? What if the thoughts, the energy, and the frequency we emit were able to shape the world around us? Understanding this, the mind expands, breaking the barriers of conditioning imposed by the manipulation of the media and traditional education systems. Imagine someone who always believed they could only be happy following a pre-established script, studying, working, getting married, retiring, and waiting for time to pass. One day this person begins to question this structure. Why does happiness always be in the future? Why does society reinforce so much the idea of scarcity, constant struggle? This is the moment when the alternative reality of the fifth dimension begins to reveal itself. Consciousness expands, and the person realizes that it is possible to create their own reality, without being trapped in the illusion of time or fear as a tool for control. But if this perception is so liberating, why do few talk about it? Why is this knowledge not widely available? Perhaps because a society that awakens to its true nature is impossible to control. And the system, in turn, needs control to keep up. But what would happen if more people started to see beyond the veil, questioning what once seemed absolute truths? If the fifth dimension is such a liberating state of consciousness, why do you almost talk about it? Simple, this information has been systematically suppressed. From the dawn of civilization, those who have power have understood that an awakened population becomes ingratable. After all, how to control someone who realizes that the rules imposed are just arbitrary buildings? Spiritual awakening directly threatens the system as it dissolves the manipulation of the mind and breaks the shackles of mental programming. It is no coincidence that those who challenged conventional narratives have been ridiculed or silenced throughout history. The great strategy for preventing this awakening is to keep the minds of the masses always occupied. Excessive irrelevant information, technological distractions, and narratives forged by media manipulation are a very clear purpose: prevent people from having time to reflect. Have you noticed how everything seems designed to keep you constantly stimulated? Incessant notifications, manufactured crises, empty entertainment, and a continuous flow of worries, all maintains consciousness imprisoned on autopilot. After all, a restless mind hardly questions reality itself. Now think, how many times have you had a deep insight, a different thinking than conventional, and felt that he dissolved in the middle of the rush of everyday life? This does not happen by chance. The structure of the modern world has been designed to prevent you from having time and mental space to question. And when someone dares to raise these issues, labels quickly appear to discredit this search: conspiracy theory, travel, mystical, silly. But why so many efforts to delegitimize something that supposedly has no value? The answer is obvious: because this truth has the power to free. But there is something even deeper behind it. The very notion of time, as we know it, can be just another control mechanism. From an early age, we learn that time is linear: past, present, and future follow an unchanging sequence. But what if it was just a mental construction? Ancestral cultures have already taught that time does not pass, we move through it. Modern science, especially quantum physics, begins to play at this point, suggesting that all possibilities exist simultaneously. The illusion of time is one of the most powerful tools of control, as it makes us live in prisoners between past regrets and anxieties about the future, preventing us from fully experiencing the now. The concept of not having time is actually a reflection of the mental programming imposed by the system. From an early age, we are conditioned to believe that time is scarce, that we need to run, produce, and compete without stopping. And in the midst of this rush, no one realizes that he is losing just what is most valuable: expanded consciousness itself. Anyone who has experienced moments of deep connection, either through meditation, nature contemplation, or even significant conversations, knows that in these moments the notion of time simply disappears. But realize how everything was structured to keep us away from this state. Excessive commitments, incessant deadlines, and even fear of the future are part of this great game. The system wants you to believe that time is against you, that you must always run after something. In this way you become an eternal prisoner of the search, without realizing that real freedom is in the understanding that everything is already accessible in the present. This perception completely changes the way you live. After all, if time is not a straight line, then the future can be created in the now. And that leads us to an even deeper question: if time is a mental construction, why are we led to fear it so much? Why is society always reinforcing fear as a control tool? Fear has always been the most effective tool for keeping society under control. Since ancient times, rulers, religions, and power systems have used this emotion to subdue the masses. The fear of the unknown, the fear of scarcity, the fear of punishment, all keeps people stuck in an alternative reality created to prevent their true expansion. When a population lives in a constant state of warning, its ability to question and see beyond the illusion of reality becomes extremely limited. After all, how can one awaken to the fifth dimension if their mind is busy just trying to survive artificially created chaos? Economic crises, global threats, pandemics, insecurity, all, when amplified by media manipulation, serves a very clear purpose: keeping people dependent on the system. Fear paralyzes, prevents critical thinking, and makes people accept any imposed solution as long as it promises protection. This is an old tactic. When a problem is presented, the answer is ready, and almost always involves more control, more rules, and less freedom. How many times has humanity have given up its rights throughout history in exchange for supposed security? Now think of your own life. How many decisions were made based on fear? Fear of failing, fear of being judged, fear of the unknown. Fear is not just an emotion, it is a mental programming mechanism. But what if, instead of running away from him, would you start questioning him? The simple act of identifying when fear is being used as a handling tool is already a gigantic step to break this cycle. To challenge fear is how to light a light in a dark room. Suddenly you realize that monsters that seemed terrifying were just shadows. And one of the most effective ways to keep people stuck in this cycle of fear is constant distraction. Because someone who is always entertained hardly realizes that he is being controlled. Have you noticed how we never had so much access to information, and at the same time we have never been so distracted? Modern technology, which could be a bridge for spiritual awakening, was transformed into a perfect mechanism of distraction. Social networks, incessant notifications, alarming news cycles, all this keeps the mind constantly occupied, preventing people from questioning their own reality. This excess of stimuli makes attention fragmented, making any deep reflection extremely difficult. After all, who has time to think about the manipulation of the mind when there is a new viral video to watch? Media manipulation also plays a crucial role in this game. This is not just what information is disclosed, but also what is systematically omitted. Themes such as energy and frequency, the power of the pineal gland, and the possibility of an alternative reality is ridiculed or simply ignored. Meanwhile, repetitive narratives about fear, insecurity, and consumption are reinforced every day. The idea is simple: to keep the population distracted and emotionally unstable so that it never realizes that there is a control structure operating behind the scenes. And the impact of this on human consciousness is deep. Technology addiction is not just a behavioral problem, it directly affects perception capacity. Studies already show that constant exposure to screens alters brain patterns, reducing concentration capacity and weakening intuition. The real question is, was this dependence an accident or was deliberately induced? If people spent half the time they spend on social networks by practicing self-knowledge, the world would be completely different. But there is something even more worrying: this distraction is not limited to the mind, but also affects the body. And what we are consuming physically may be further away from our true conscience. Most people do not realize, but the body is also a direct target of manipulation. What we eat, breathe, and absorb daily has a deep impact on our consciousness. From ultra-processed foods to chemical additives in water and air, it seems designed to keep your mind in a state of lethargy. The pineal gland, often called the portal for expanded consciousness, is one of the main targets of this silent attack. Fluoride in water, heavy food metals, and electromagnetic pollution contribute to the calcification of this small but powerful structure. And without an active pineal gland, the perception of alternative reality becomes increasingly difficult. The control system knows that an intoxicated body is a barrier to spiritual awakening. And so, the food and pharmaceutical industry are still holding hands, promoting a cycle of dependence. First, they offer products that weaken the body, then they have solutions in the form of remedies and treatments that never really heal, just mask the symptoms. This is not conspiracy theory. Just look at the amount of people living on anxiety and depression medicines, when, in fact, the root of the problem is often in the lifestyle imposed by the system itself. But how to get out of this trap? The answer begins with knowledge and the change of habits. Reduce the consumption of artificial foods, opt for a more natural diet, and seek practices that assist body detox, such as intermittent fasting and consumption of antioxidant foods, can make all the difference. Activation of the pineal gland, for example, can be stimulated through practices such as meditation, sun exposure, and the use of herbs such as turmeric and spirulina. Small daily changes can have a huge impact on mental clarity and energy perception. But why is this kind of knowledge not widespread? Why, instead, are we encouraged to discredit anything that talks about energy and frequency? We live in an age when talking about spirituality, energy, and frequency is seen as mystical or even naive. But have you noticed how this knowledge has been systematically discredited over time? Ancient civilizations, such as the Egyptians and the Hindus, already understood that reality goes beyond what physical senses can capture. However, modern society ridiculed these ideas, labeling them as superstition or pseudoscience. And why? Because a human being who understands his own internal power does not need intermediaries, neither religious institutions, nor paternalistic governments, nor systems that sell false solutions. Materialist science contributed to this disconnection, focusing only on what can be measured and completely ignoring the subtle field of consciousness. But ironically, quantum physics itself now begins to validate what the wise men have already known for millennia: everything in the universe is energy and frequency. What we think, feel, and vibrate directly influences our reality. However, this information remains marginalized, as its impact would be revolutionary. Imagine a world where people understand that your mind creates reality. Fear as a control tool would lose its strength, and the system itself would collapse. And this does not only happen in the academic field. How many times have you seen movies, series, or even TV shows portray spiritual themes as something foolish or fanciful? This narrative was carefully built so that people would not take this knowledge seriously. Meanwhile, concepts such as manifestation, power of intention, and spiritual awakening are treated as mere beliefs rather than real tools of transformation. What happens when you repeat to a society, generation after generation, that it has no power? It becomes passive, shaped, and easy to manipulate. But who begins to question all this realizes that the truth has never disappeared. She has always been there, just covered by layers of distraction and conditioning. And the awakening to this reality does not happen at once, but as a continuous process of self-discovery. Awakening does not happen overnight, nor at a single time of lighting. It is a gradual process, such as peeling the layers of an onion. With each new discovery, the perception of reality expands. At first it can be uncomfortable. Questioning everything that has been taught, realizing that much of life has been lived under a veil of manipulation of the mind, can cause shock and even resistance. But since one begins to see beyond the illusions of reality, there is no turning back. Consciousness expands, and what once seemed unquestionable now reveals itself as just a carefully designed system to limit human potential. Each person awakens at their own pace. For some, the trigger can be a crisis experience, such as a disease, a loss, or an unexpected event that forces them to look at life in another way. For others, the process happens more subtly: a book, a conversation, an inexplicable synchronicity that plants the seed of doubt about what the alternative reality really is. But one thing is certain: no one wakes up completely and just gets there. Awakening is a way, not a final destination. And the key to advancing in it lies in self-awareness, the ability to question, and continuous search for deeper truths. This process also requires courage. Awakening means leaving the comfort zone and abandoning many certainties that once seemed absolute. Some relationships may transform, some habits may lose meaning, and even life vision can change completely. But in return, something is much greater: the freedom to live authentically, without being hostage to fear as a tool for control or technological distractions that consume time and energy. Reality begins to be shaped from the inside out, and no longer determined by external forces. But here is the big question: what to do with this knowledge? What is the use of understanding all this if there is no practical action to transform one's life? Now that you know the truth about the fifth dimension, the question that remains is, what are you going to do with this information? Will you continue living on autopilot, attached to distractions and narratives imposed by the system? Or will it begin to question, observe patterns, and expand your consciousness? Awakening is not a magical event. It requires intent, curiosity, and, above all, courage. Courage to look beyond the obvious, to deconstruct beliefs, and to assume control of reality itself. Then look around you. How many of your choices were yours really? How many times have you been carried away by fear, mental programming and media manipulation? Maybe it's time to change that. Small actions make all the difference. Disconnect from technological distractions, practice self-knowledge, seek sources of information that expand their perception, question what has always been presented as absolute truth. You have more power than you think, but you need to learn to use it. And remember, the system wants you to remain asleep. It has its distraction, with its compliance, its blind acceptance of the rules of the game. But now you know that there is much further than they told you. And the choice is yours, to continue believing in the illusion of reality or taking the first step towards expanded consciousness. Awakening has started, and you are part of it. If this message made sense to you, be sure to subscribe to the channel and activate notifications. Here, you will keep learning about the secrets they never wanted you to find out. After all, knowledge is power, and now this power is in your hands.